What's going on, guys? Welcome back to SWANTALK, another podcast episode. We are in the new year. We're starting the year out strong. I got my first official guest, came all the way from North Carolina, Lyle Barnett. I'll let him introduce himself real quick.
I'm Lyle Barnett, from a little town in the geographical center of North Carolina. Went to a small 1A high school, played sports, was always interested and involved in some form of racing, whether it was some motocross stuff early on or I had some interest actually in NASCAR-style round track racing before I got into drag racing. My best friend growing up, that's what he did, and I thought that's what I wanted to do. And my dad, being a drag racer, kind of like yours, he grew up doing it before I was ever thought of. When I came along, he kind of stepped away, and then when I became of age, we decided we were going to go one direction or the other. So drag racing is what we chose. I started that in 2007 or 8. I was 15-ish years old, so I've been doing it. I just turned 31 the day after Christmas, so about 16 years is how long I've been doing it. Like Justin, I came from the radio world for the most part. X275, limited drag radio, a short stint in Radio versus the World that went up in flames, literally. But last year, a little over a year ago, the beginning of December of 2020, Justin Elks at Modern Racing had an open seat in one of their NHRA Pro Modifieds. I worked there in Mooresville, was going by the shop to get parts for the shop that I worked at then, Harrell Engine and Dyno, and I walked in one day. I was like, I've always wanted to drive one of these. And he said, well, that seat's open. 2 weeks later, I found myself at Elite HP in Fort Worth meeting with Richard Freeman and Erica Enders and Alex Laughlin when he was there at the time. And a month later, I made my licensing pass on NHRA Pro Modified. So it kind of all happened quick. So I've only been doing racing at the professional level for a year, but we had a really strong season this year. We won't get into too much too early, but that's kind of a very quick version of how I got to where I am now.
So I've known you for a long time, from back in radio racing and all that. Like you said, I grew up radio racing, but what was the first car? You said when you were 15, 16 years old.
So Tommy Kirk, who owns MacFab Beadlocks, when MacFab started, that's what we called our race team. It was not a beadlock company to start with. We just wanted something. There were about 4 of us, myself, Tommy Kirk, Jason Muller, 3 to 4 of us that raced together, and we just wanted a team name. We wanted something to put on a T-shirt. So MacFab was it, and it's short for machining and fabrication. Tommy and them had a little machine shop that they worked in, and that's just kind of how that came about. But Tommy had bought a 4th-generation Camaro, had like a 468-inch big block in it. And I went 7.0 index racing. So we raced 7.0 for a year, went to Pro Tree Eliminator in 6.0 index with the same car with a bigger motor. And then we bought a 3rd-gen Camaro, a 100% a mullet machine.
Was that the blue one?
No, the blue one was the 4th-gen.
Okay.
The 3rd-gen was, or the IROC or whatever, it was a silver, kind of a metallic silver color, but we put a 565-inch big block in it with nitrous, and we went X275 racing. Now, mind you, at that time,
X275 wasn't what it is. Yeah,
520s.
I remember it.
So they're a complete second faster today, and that was 2010 or 9 or 10, somewhere in there.
Somewhere in that area.
So when we built it, we were running 530s. As the class would progress a tenth, we were always a tenth behind.
Yeah.
When they were running 20s, we were running 30s. When they started running 480s, we were running 490s. We were always just a little bit behind the 8 ball, but we ran with them for the most part. Now, also back then, Justin Smith, Bobby Flippin, names like that were front runners.
I remember them. Bobby used to have the mailbox.
Yeah,
that's the scoop.
S10 truck. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think he may still have that thing, but him and Justin Smith dominated back then.
They were killing it.
But when X275 started running in the 450 to 460 range, which let's just say it was 2012, which is probably about right, we decided that just wasn't the class we wanted to pursue, mainly because around home, the local heads-up radio class, which is where Ziff Hudson came from, Barry Mitchell was racing in that area back then, they were progressing faster than X275 was, and we knew we had to step it up. So we decided we were going to go Pro 275 racing. Took my 4th gen Camaro, bought twin turbos for it. We were going with an SBX and twins. We were going to race Pro 275 and then be able to compete around home. And that's when the Corvette that I campaigned in Radio versus the World for a little bit came along. Barry Mitchell had bought it, decided he didn't want to race it, and sold it to my dad and I in 2013 or 14. And Eric Yost at Customs by Biggin began the construction process of that car. Yeah. So that kind of, I guess, gets us, to where, I guess what I'm most known for probably in the racing world.
Well, I mean, I think that was a bad deal, but you were racing beforehand too. I remember, so like you said, you're older than I am, but when they were running that, my dad had an X275 car. Mm-hmm. That's when he was back racing. I was just a little kid running around. I got in the X275 probably when they were starting to run, like you said, 450s, 460s. That's when I got into it. But I mean, I've known you from going there, and then it was at South Georgia is when all hell broke loose. Mm-hmm. You were running Radio versus the World, and that was a brand new car, wasn't it?
September of 2015, and the car was about 8 months old. So now it was from here. Bill Futch drove it for a little bit in Outlaw 10.5, and we converted it. After Barry bought it, he bought turnkey package from Proline. Motor, I mean, everything you needed to assemble the car and go Radio versus the World racing. So it had only been together about 8 months.
How fast was the class run at that time?
So when I had the pass, I had the crash. Jamie Hancock went 397, and if I remember right, Jason Mahalik and Billy Stocklin in Memphis, March of that year. So September 2015 was the crash. Earlier that year in March, I think they went 94, and I think they had the record. So it was a
but now they go, what is it? Is it a 49?
49, yeah.
The record now? So it's changed over time, and technology's gotten much better. But back then, I mean, that was fast. If you could run 394 O's. I mean, I remember radio racing, and we'll get into the wreck here in a minute, but I remember, so Kevin Mullins, you had Stevie Jackson, you had Jason, and
Kyle Hutel was still fast then.
Kyle Hutel, and then Kenny Hubbard.
Yep.
Kenny had the blue Camaro.
Kevin Fiskus.
Yep. So what amazed me back then was, back then I think the record was like a 432.
Yep. And
then they went 428.
Yep.
And then Stevie Jackson went 418.
Yep.
And then Kevin Mullins went 411.
Yep.
And then he went 409.
Well, Dwayne was first or Jamie Hancock went O's in Georgia or in at Shadyside.
Okay, yes.
But I remember. You remember back
crazy how it progressed.
But you remember back when David Wolf was the man.
Yes.
And Radio versus the World was running 440s, right? And then you think about where we are today. There are ultra street cars with 281-inch mod motors and 76-millimeter turbos running that fast.
Dude,
David Wolf had a big block and twin 88s or 90s.
It's crazy where it's progressed to. But what I was getting to is what amazed me was, when one person would run that number, it seemed like the next race there was a handful of people that could just do it. It was just waiting for somebody to be able to run it.
You wanted to be the first, but you didn't because you didn't want the rule change on your combination.
You would definitely get hit with weight. And then, like, I think so this is kind of like a conspiracy type deal or whatever. Was it Brad the first one to the threes, or was it Jamie?
Officially, it was Brad. Now, I'm a little biased, obviously, because I'm associated with Pete Harrell and everybody at HED, so I like to say that. But Brad, I think, at Huntsville at Radio Fest was the first official 3-second run.
And that was 399.
399.
And the whole world fucking went in flames over that.
Turned upside down. So then, like, a week or two later, Keith Berry and the Proline guys went to Steel or somewhere and went like 398 or 397 and were claiming to be the record holders. So the next week, Brad and Pete rented Huntsville again, drove down there, and they went like 394. And that stood as the record for, a little while. But like anything else in any other class, at that time, most of the records were broken at Donald's race. So there'd be a record set in the spring, and all year long people would chase it, and then somebody would break it in the fall. And that's just kind of the way it went for a while. Now, when Tyler Crossnow came along and Jimmy Bradshaw came along, and you started seeing that caliber of track prep at other tracks, then there were record-breaking passes made elsewhere, and then Donald's fixed for that, which some people fought him for. was just to have 3 or 4 or 5 races a year,
and
hire the best track prep guys, give them 19 qualifiers, and tell them to go after it. You know? So whatever.
That deal there, they get a limited qualifying sessions.
I mean, I think in my opinion, you should get 4 qualifiers and that's it.
I think Tyler and them hold the record right now, don't they? It's 349.
Ferris did it, but I swear it was.
Was it at Georgia?
It was at the Sweet 16 last year.
Okay, so
maybe but I could be wrong.
Yeah, man. So it's crazy where the times have come now. Even like what I'm racing now. I mean, the fastest I've ever been is 366. I just went 373 in the no prep car. Yep. So technology has came so far away, and the motors, the tires, the transmissions, converters, and everything. You would have never thought 10 years ago you would have been this fast.
No. And my opinion on it, some people agree with and some of you may not, but track prep is the reason that radial racing is on its way out.
For sure.
100%. Like I've said it on several other podcasts, and some people agree and some people disagree. You've got this elite group of super tuners is what I call them. Steve Petty's in there, Jamie Miller's in there, Justin Elks is in there, Anthony Lum's in there, Brandon Stroud's in there, Lee White, Jeff Pierce.
All they do is swing a bat.
Billy Stockland. When you've got that caliber of people that race at the professional level, when they spill over into the radial scene and you give them a track that can hold the kind of horsepower that they are capable of making, this is what you get.
You can't beat them.
No.
I tell people all the time, even like Stevie, and there's a lot of people that hate on Stevie. I like Stevie. Have we had our differences throughout the deal? I mean, I'm a competitive person just like you are, so yes, I want to beat him every time I beat him. But I tell everybody all the time, Stevie's hard to beat. One, he's got unlimited budget and he's got unlimited knowledge.
Yep.
You can't beat those two.
Well, you think about the people that surround him. Now, Stevie by himself is a talented dude.
No, yeah, but he's earned all that. I get that to him. But you have Stevie, Billy Stockland, Phil Schuler, Jack.
Yep.
I mean, that is an elite team. It don't matter what class they go to, they're going to be a top runner
100%.
just because of how they are.
And with any combination.
Yeah,
they're not combination. They're not limited by. I mean, if the NHRA decides, you know what, we want nitrous cars to win the championship this year, and we're going to make sure the rules allow for that, Stevie would just get in a nitrous car and go win the championship. So they haven't had a whole lot of experience with a turbo car, and obviously because of the way Stevie thinks of them, which actually he doesn't truly hate them, but because he's kind of portrayed that, he'll never run one. But whether it's Pro Charger, Roots or Screw, nitrous, like it just doesn't matter.
Do you think he'll stay with a Screw for NHRA next year, or do you think he'll ever go to a Pro Charger? He used to run Pro Charger back in the day. He was kind of like the first one.
I've heard that he's got a Pro Charger car in the works that's maybe switched up, being that the NHRA's kind of dumbed that combination down a little bit. I don't think you'll see him leave the Roots blower, but you never know. They're pretty good.
Well, they're allowing y'all to have a Screw this year now too, right?
Yeah, the rules don't really favor it too well.
Is it because nobody's ran it, or?
I think that they're trying to go the opposite way that they let the Pro Charger in. So when they brought the Pro Charger into NHRA, they kind of brought it in with the cuffs off, right? Like just
let it go.
And they burnt the scoreboards down. Jose won 6 out of the 9 races this year, or 6 out of 11, whatever. Had a dominant year, and they constantly throughout the season were having to make these huge rule swings to try to slow them down.
Yeah.
And that cost a lot of money. Like the first rule change they made on average cost teams about $100,000 because it changed everything from bumper to bumper. Like the engines had to change, whether it was compression ratio or camshaft or a combination of the two. You had to change converters. You had to change gear sets in the transmission. You had to change rear gear. It completely changed the game. They thought just slowing the blower down that nobody would spend the money to make everything else work with whatever overdrive they chose, which was 120. But that's not the way we work, right?
Yeah.
Like we still want to be fast.
Do they limit y'all to like your rear gears and all that?
Yeah, so we're then I think you could run up to a 456 or a 501. And they spec a rear gear for us now, which I think is back to 456 if I remember right. But for the screw blown deal, they can only run them at 75 over. And they have to run a 390 rear gear. So I don't know a lot about a screw blower, but to me it doesn't seem like it favors them too well. And from what I've heard from people like Mike Janis and those guys, we're allowed a 3-speed transmission and that's it in NHRA, and they don't even think the car will be in high gear yet when it gets to the quarter mile, right, with that rear gear. So I don't know what they'll do to fix that. Sounds like they would just give them some rear gear, but who knows,
Wow.
Is what it is.
So anyways, back to where, like you said, I know you from racing, but like you said, you had a pretty big accident. Probably nobody wants to go through. I mean, it's probably one of the worst things ever.
Wouldn't suggest it.
I've always said I've been in nitrous backfires, like when you have nitrous motor backfire to scoop you, and it gets hot on the firewall, but I've never been on fire. Right. So like that's probably one of my biggest fears. I hope, knock on wood, that never happens.
I hope it never happens to anybody else. You know, I mean, it was my biggest fear too. You know, burning alive.
What caused it? What happened?
So back then we ran Big Stuff 3, which was, you know, back in.
That was the stuff that everybody used.
Like Holly really was. I mean, Holly was around, but their electronic fuel injection to that level wasn't quite there. Fuel Tech was kind of on its way in, but really not there yet. I don't even know if Hall Tech was a thing. It could have been back then, but it definitely wasn't around. You either ran Big Stuff or fast.
Yes.
You know? And so we were running Big Stuff. We had twin turbo Hemi on alcohol, ran 2 sets of injectors, so 16 total. And back then, which you still do today too, but you ran individual driver boxes for those injectors to fire them. You didn't just run them off of the ECU itself. So one of the driver boxes, for whatever reason, dropped an injector, only one of the 2 on number 8. And when one goes lean and mean, things get rough. It torched the back of the head, between the block and the head, and when it did, it cut an oil passage as it went through. So we had, 80 pounds of oil pressure, 100 pounds of fuel pressure with alcohol, 60 pounds of boost, and all that shit was on fire. And it came, out of the back of the head. All I had was a carbon enclosure that covered the transmission. Well, carbon is good when it's a solid piece, but you set it on fire and it just turns into carpet. It's just the material left. So when it torched, it just filled the entire inside of the car with burning oil, alcohol, and whatever else was coming through there. So, like if you look at, I've got pictures and I could send you some of the engine compartment after the fire. There's still stickers on the intake, like legible stickers, but the entire inside of the car was completely burnt. Like it was just all inside. And it was just a perfect storm. In the worst way, obviously, for that to have happened, and for 28 seconds. And it happened at speed, which also was not good. I was, when I went through the traps, I think I was running 175 because it had laid over at 400 or 500 feet. But for 28 seconds, I bounced off the walls and was on fire. It was.
What was going through your mind?
I was dead. 100%. This is how I'm dying, and I'm dying today. And I was burning, and I knew I was in trouble, but
Did you have all your safety gear? I know you.
Yes,
you're
no.
big. You're big about pushing safety, which I am too. I have all my safety gear.
Right.
And you've even commented on some of my photos about putting my face mask down, which I do now. Everything is big to me about safety. But at that point in time, did you have everything like you have now, or was it
not like I have now? And unfortunately for the drag racing community as a whole, we're reactive instead of proactive. It takes something bad happening to somebody for everybody else
to change,
to open their eyes and say, man, that could happen to me. And a lot of the guys that I was racing with at that time, Jamie Hancock and I were probably the 2 youngest in the class, were fathers, husbands, maybe were the only source of income and, it for their household. Like there were several in the staging lanes I know that night that were like, damn, if that happened to me, like, I don't know what my family would do, right? Because nobody knew if I was alive or not or was going to make it, and obviously we could get into that too. There was a time there where I wasn't going to, and we ended up pulling through. But anyway, I had on 5-5 gloves, which, any of you listening that don't know, there's levels to safety equipment, just like there's levels to, I don't know, what do you want to call it? You start at the bottom with a single layer.
And you can work your way up. Like you got
dash 5.
Yeah, 3, 5. I think they make a dash 10, 15, and 20.
Yep.
And I wear 20.
Yep.
I think you wear 22.
20
most people that run alcohol in the car, they have to run
at least 15.
At least a 15, but most people run SFI 20. If you see me in the car, I wear boots. I wear flammable socks underneath it. I mean, I don't wear like the flammable shirt,
right,
or whatever. This year I'm going to do that or whatever. But for the most part, I try to. I see a lot of people, especially a lot of the grudge racers that we go to, and we'll get to that in a minute. Yeah. Dude, they'll be wearing swimming trunks, and like I just said, when it happens, then you'll regret it.
Oh yeah, it's a need it and not have it.
Yeah,
and to have it and not need it. You know.
So you said how long did you say we were in the car?
28 seconds. So I was on fire, and the levels of the fire suits, that 1, 5, 10, 15, and 20 are all directly related to how long you can be on fire. Before the suit is no longer going to keep you from burning up. Right.
But back then, this was 10 years ago. Suits weren't what they are today.
No, they're not. They weren't at all. But now I had on a 15, and you can see the scars on my hands here. Where the cuff of my 15 suit stopped is where my burns start. So I had on 5 gloves, and it burnt through them pretty quick. I had on 5 shoes, burnt through them pretty quick, and I had no head sock and my shield up. Well, anywhere I just talked about, hands, feet, and face is where I got burnt the most. And, well, with the exception of what I inhaled and got in my lungs. But where I had on a good suit, I'm good. Like, I've got a couple contact burns.
Yeah.
And it was literally where the roll bar got so hot that when I hit the wall and leaned against it, it just burnt through my suit that way. But where there was open flame, I have no burns with the exception of a couple spots where I had on the right stuff. So obviously from that, I wear a 20 suit now. I wore boots early in the year, and I went to a 20 shoe. So I do not wear the boots anymore. 20 gloves, head sock. I've got a skirt on my helmet, the big gasket on my helmet, fresh air,
you got everything.
Took a lot of steps, obviously, to prevent that from happening again. Now, the odds of it happening again like that are obviously very slim. But like you said, when it's your time, it's your time, and you don't ever know when it's coming, And when you race at the level that you and I race at, even back into X275 and the radial stuff, it's not a matter of if it's going to happen. It's when you're going to wreck. You're going to wreck. They're on the ragged edge all the time, especially what you're doing. Within the no prep stuff, y'all have equivalent power to what we run in our pro mods, and y'all are running on a no prep surface. Yeah. Like some of you guys, y'all are wrecking every single year, and that's, so you need to take that into consideration and be serious. Like you, I've became good friends with Dave Comstock, and I gave him a lot of shit early on about it, and he stepped his stuff up. But I still see, even on the show, when I watch, the Street Outlaws and do the ride-along with Wes and the guys at Drag Illustrated on Mondays, I still see on camera, especially on the street,
a lot of them guys don't wear their safety stuff.
The name like Chuck, I don't know if I've ever seen that dude wear gloves.
And dude, I don't care because I do care, but I don't care because that's their life.
That's right.
But I try to tell people all the time, and you set an example. Mm-hmm. But that's what they want to do. That's their decision. Just like you said, when it happens, hopefully everything goes good and don't go bad. But I've seen quite a few of them that not be up to standards, and they've gotten better. I like Sean. I love Sean, but for a while he was wearing Converse in the car, and I think now he wears a shoe. Yep. Like now he's, even if it's a SFI 5, it don't even matter. If it's something, just something going on. I mean, but Sean, he's that street guy, very hardcore. If he could, he'd wear flip flops in the car.
Absolutely. I think probably does when the camera's off.
But I'm saying, I think anybody would do that to be comfortable. But you have to be able to be safe because you do have a family to go home to, and you have people that still want to be with you and all that. Yeah. So I applaud you because you are on it very, very tough about safety, about what a lot of
at the end of the day, what you and the rest of the guys on the Street Outlaws need to understand is that at home, all across really all across the world, there's a little kid watching you.
For sure.
And you need to be setting an example as if that kid was your kid and wanted to be just like you. Because there are kids out there that want to be you. They want to be me. They want to be Daddy Dave. They want to be Chuck. They want to be all, they want to be these big names and race at that level. And you need to be setting an example just like you want to set for your kid, that if they're going to go out there and race, they need to be wearing what they need to be wearing, right? And
no half-assing. I just here recently, it was just on the show, we won the Texas event, and I had a woman email me, and her son was upset because I beat Lizzie in the second round, and I was hyped. When I went through the finish line, I went through the quarter mile. Before I hit the return road, my gloves were off, helmet was off, my seat belts were off, and at that still speed, you're still probably rolling 100 mile an hour, at least 140 mile an hour, somewhere there. So something could have happened, but at that moment in time, I was such stuck in the moment.
Oh yeah.
I sent her and her son an apology. I said that doesn't always happen like that. I said don't do that, blah blah blah. Right. But I did. People really look at that because her son's like, well, if he can do it, I can do it. He drives a little junior dragster. So I do agree to that. You do have to set an example.
Like in the NHRA, if you do that, you get a fine. Like they have, I mean, it's different.
It's different over there.
But like that's literally a fine, in the NHRA if they catch you with your stuff off before you turn off. So yeah, absolutely don't do that. But I understand, because and you racing at the level you're at now, like winning over there is tough. For sure. It's not easy. You had a really good year, and we're all, especially coming from where I came from, racing with you, we're all proud of you, and hope that you can continue.
I hope this year, to season 5, it does well too. I mean, that's my game plan. I think we have a better shot this year with the car. We got a whole season under our belt. We had a lot of stupid stuff happen last year, and then
growing pains suck.
Dude, that sucks, especially with a new car. That's why I tell people all the time. There's quite a bit of people that's coming out with a new car this year, and they're like, well, you came out with a new car and you finished 3rd in points. I'm building a new car. I'll be at 3rd or 2nd or 1st. And like I told, it doesn't work like that. No. There's just having a new car is awesome, but there's so much that goes into having a new car, tuning wise. No data, technology, shock changes, 4-link. I think Dad and I probably changed the 4-link setting on the car at least once per race. Mm-hmm. Just trying to get it to where we're at.
You have to if you want to be as successful.
Yeah, and that's where it is to go on from there. But it is very, very tough over there. No different than NHRA. NHRA is tough, and we'll get to talking that here in a little bit because that's probably one thing I'll never do. And I don't know what it is about it, but I just can't run quarter mile. I feel like it's a whole different ball game over there.
And over the past 10 years or 12, however long you've been doing it, I think a reason that you and I have been as successful is you're jumping in and out of cars. Like I've never seen you drive the same thing more than for a couple years, right?
I don't.
So jumping in and out of new cars, you jumped right in a brand new car last year. Won the 3rd or 4th race y'all went to, so, and that alone, just natural ability to feel, there's natural talent that comes along with driving these things. Yeah. You can, your dad, just like mine, is 100% the reason that I am where I am today, right? Like he's funded 99% of my racing career.
Yes.
I've always had really good equipment, and I'm not, I get the daddy's money hate mail all the time, and yeah. But you can't tell me that if you weren't given the opportunity, you wouldn't take it.
For sure.
Right? Now what you and I chose to do with the opportunity that we were given was on us, right? And
then you got to go get your sponsors, which you got plenty on now to where, are you going to do NHRA again this year?
I am. Okay. Yeah. Well, so we obviously had a very good end of the season and won 2 out of the last 3, which is what I was getting at about switching cars. I drove a Pro Charge car all year long. After Charlotte, there were 3 races left, Dallas, Bristol, and Vegas, and we switched cars and combinations completely, right? I went from a Pro-Charged Hemi to the twin-turbo car, completely different car. We had like 2 weeks to change it over, and we went to Dallas and won, which would have been my first national event win. Went to Bristol and struggled a little bit, kind of got behind the 8 ball, got our shit back together, went to Vegas, and we won again. So we won 2 out of the last 3, but over the course of my career, I don't know how many cars I've driven, but, Tommy Kirk let me drive anything and everything he had. After my fire, Jason Digby just opened the doors and gave me the tooth jerker, really, the leaf spring car. I've still got it, and we still plan to race it. And because of those 2, everybody else that let me drive one, obviously, and then my dad, I've been very fortunate to be given the opportunities I have.
It's taking you to where you're at now.
Yep. And it's where it's where I've always wanted to be. I get to drag race for a living, and that's pretty cool.
All right. So before we get too far off, let's go back to the wreck. You were in there for 28 seconds. Did you get out under your own power?
I did. So
like you already mentioned that you thought you were going to die in there. That was it. When you were able to get out, what was the feeling like?
Well, obviously, initially it was instant relief, like, okay, I've made it out. Yeah. But then, Barry Mitchell, you're good friends with, was a huge part of my recovery, and it started when my car came to a stop at the top end of South Georgia. Barry was the first one to the car, and the fire in the car was rolling. It had laid the Lexan windows out and was rolling up over the car, and he literally couldn't get close enough to get me out. He was going to try. So he comes to the driver door, couldn't get it, runs around to the other side, and as he ran around the back of the car, I was getting out of the passenger side, or of the driver's side. So, I got out and was just kind of obviously in shock, and I look down and it's just hanging off of my hands, and that's skin and my gloves, what was left. And so I walk around the other side of the car, and Barry's screaming at me to get down and roll, because I guess my back was on fire. So I got down, and they got me put out, and Barry's hovering over me, and he's like, "You're going to be fine. You're okay," and I knew I was in trouble. I knew what I had inhaled was bad. So I got him to get my helmet off. A few minutes later, my dad comes down, and some of my crew who ran the entire length of the track, they kind of get me stabilized there. Ambulance comes in, just so that the ambulance at the track didn't have to leave. They brought one from the outside in. In 12 minutes, I was out the gate. From the time the fire lit, 12 minutes later, I was out the gate. I remember asking the paramedic how long until we got to the hospital, and he said 25 minutes, and that was it for 2.5 weeks. I woke up to it. Well, I was awake and coherent between that time, but they had me kind of medically in a coma, I guess you would say, sedated for the 2.5 weeks, so that I didn't remember some of the procedures and stuff, because early on, it's pretty rough. Like, they do a lot of scraping and debris, and, I got fake skin or pig skin, cadaver skin on, and cadaver and pig skin off, and then they took skin off of my legs and put permanent grafts on. So, all the skin you see on my hands and feet came from my legs. The graft you see on my face came from my scalp. But there was, a lot of surgeries that early on that are pretty painful, both going in and out. So they kind of keep you sedated there for a while just to let your body rest and heal, and then they kind of start waking you up. But I was in there for...
How long were you in the hospital?
2 months, roughly. I spent the majority of that in intensive care. With the exception of my lungs, burns like that, you're usually a 7 to 10 day stay. But I had inhalation damage. I was on I've got a scar from the trach. I was trached for a while. It burnt my lungs up pretty good. So your lungs have 40 divisions, and it burnt 38 of mine.
What do you mean by 40 divisions?
So there's in your lungs, there's almost like levels, right? There's divisions in your lungs, and there's 40 of them.
Okay.
It burnt 38 of the 40 in mine. And it was the equivalent of smoking 2 packs of cigarettes for 50 years. If you do that math, it's roughly 750,000 cigarettes, right? So, or 750,000 packs. No, just cigarettes. So it was pretty rough. Like they were kind of touch and go on whether I was going to make it for about 5 to 7 days. It was, man, we just don't know. We're just going to keep trying. We'll keep cleaning them out, and hopefully he can pull through, and I did.
And I remember your dad was there.
Mm-hmm.
Was he there the whole time?
He was there the whole time. So not long before that, we had gotten, because you know how it gets when you start racing at Donald's for long enough, you literally need to build a hotel on site. You're there for a week. So we had just gotten a motorhome not long before that. And my crew guys loaded the burnt car up and the rest of our stuff, broke our pit down, drove all my stuff home, unhooked the trailer, brought the motorhome back to my dad. They parked it in the parking lot of the burn center, and that's where my dad lived for 2 months. But my now wife, my mom, my stepmom, my stepdad, they all, spent 90% at least of their time there. My mom would have to run home and work for a couple of days, but, then right back to Augusta. They lived in hotels. A lot of expense there that you just don't think about. And I'll talk about, the fundraiser and stuff I do for the burn center in a little while, but
definitely we'll get to that.
There's a lot of expense that you just don't think about when you talk about staying not only in the hospital, but when you're 2.5 or 3 hours from home, right? You can't drive home every night as a family member. So we had some awesome support from our friends and family around home that helped pay for hotel rooms, and Jeff Miles, Angie Miles, and Morgan and Shelby Miles that at the time were at Carolina Dragway kept my family fed for the most part when we were there, and there were a lot of people that did that. Mike Merle that used to work for Stevie, and his wife, Cherie Jackson, who is Stevie Jackson's wife, Chris Johnson's wife, Stephanie, there was a lot of them around there. Hopefully I didn't forget anybody, but that kept my family fed, and the support system that was provided by the racing community alone was something pretty special down there. At the time, there was only one person before me who had received more mail at that burn center, and that was Travis Barker, who was the drummer for Blink-182 when the plane went down there, and that's where he ended up when they patched him back together. But I received the second most mail they've ever seen, and most of that, not all, but most of it was from the racing community.
Did you read it all?
I did, and it took me and my mom. So we brought it home in 2 printer paper boxes, right?
Yeah.
And they were full. Both of them were full of cards and stuff. And when we got home, because obviously there for a couple months I didn't really do much, but and my mom and I would sit there for periods of time throughout the day, and we pulled every single one out, and read them. So it was pretty cool to have that kind of support from everyone that was involved. But since we're speaking on the racing community, it was pretty special.
Well, was there ever a time, like in the hospital? I mean, you said the first couple of days they were talking about like there was a possibility you weren't going to make it.
Right.
Was there ever like an actual time where they really said like this could be it?
So in that 5 to 7 day stint where I told you that they had found the lung damage, they came to the waiting room to tell my family, and they said it's a 50-50 shot. Now there's a 50-50 shot. You're going to come home every day, right, when you walk out the door. But we were literally, it could go one way or the other. They also said that if he does make it, he could be on a ventilator for the rest of his life, and that's no way to live, right? But at that time, that was the time where it was like, this is make or break. They either can repair the lung damage with the treatments that they were doing at the time, or there was nothing they could do. And so there was never a time where it was like he's about to flatline, or there was a time there where my lungs were either going one direction or the other, and thank the good Lord above that they.
Where was it that you were at?
Augusta, Georgia, at the JMS Burn Center, at the doctor's hospital. Unfortunately, earlier last year, the lead doctor there, Dr. Mullins, passed away he had a freak brain aneurysm. But they an unbelievable job down there. They took one of the darkest times for myself and my family, and they treated my family like they had never seen a patient like me before. They let them know every step of the way what they were doing, how they were doing it. Today we're going to do these 2 surgeries, or tomorrow for the rest of the week he's got 4 surgeries or whatever.
What was the total amount of surgeries? Do you know?
20. Now I count any time I was put to sleep for anything burn related as some kind of procedure, right? And that includes the laser treatments that I got. So if you don't want to consider those a surgery, then somewhere between 20 and 22 is, because I would go in and have fake skin put on. I would go back in to have that fake skin, or not fake, but cadaver, not my own, take it off. If it didn't look quite like they wanted it, they put more back on. And those were all individual surgeries, right? Like sometimes I would go in for one, they would take it off, and then I'd go right back in for the other one to put it back on, right? So, I've had my eyelids rebuilt 3 times, which involved taking skin off my neck. And then they cut my eyelid in half, put skin in between to give me functional eyelids again. I'm due for another one now. That one eye stays pretty red, but I'm just tired of going under, like it's.
So you still have to do surgeries now?
I need to. I don't have to. It's 100% up to me. I'm not being advised by anyone that you absolutely.
Do you have any issues like seeing or anything?
I don't have any issues seeing, man. I had 20/20 vision before, and I just actually had a physical to get my NHRA license at the beginning of last year, and still have 2015. Like, I guess I got them shut in time. Yeah. There was 0 damage to my eyeballs, which is amazing, really. But as far as having anything else done, man, I just, for now, until I start having problems, I just don't think I will. I have eye infections that happen fairly often, and unlike you two, as your eyes tear, you have a duct in the top and a duct in the bottom, and when they produce tears, they drain through another duct. Like, you may not know that, but
I don't
have the lower tear duct anymore. So if you go in the mirror tonight and pull your eyes down, you can see they're in the corner. There are these little holes, and that's where the tears drain. So mine don't drain; they just run down my face. So if you see me, especially if it's windy on a cooler night at the racetrack or wherever,
so you have to wipe your face.
Constantly wiping my eyes all the time, right? And that's because they produce tears when my tears don't drain. Now the alternative to that was that they neither produced nor drained, and that's eye drops every 5 minutes. So I got the best of the worst, right? Sure. It definitely could have been worse. Now the downside is at night, when I'm asleep and I relax, my eyes open, which my wife says is super weird. But
like when you sleep, your eyes are open?
Open. Like you can see my eyeballs when I'm asleep.
I
don't know that. I'm asleep, but
I'm asleep.
the downside is that they dry out.
I think that would be pretty weird.
Oh, yeah,
especially the wife.
She would like reach over there, and like try to close them, and now she just doesn't. We've been together for 8 years, so she just doesn't care anymore. But the downside is that they get really dry at night, and they do seem to get infections pretty often. So with the exception of that, I'm super blessed, obviously, to still be here. But
let me ask you more of a personal question.
Go ahead.
You and your wife, you've been
Yep.
together for a long time.
Yep.
I've always said it. You have a good-looking wife, y'all.
Thank
You were a good-looking dude, and
Yep.
you still are. But I'm saying,
Right.
did it change anything in the relationship?
To be honest, it did.
I mean, y'all are still together. You're married now,
and gonna be a dad.
so you're about to have a kid. Do you
About to
know
have
if
a
you're
kid.
having what
I'm
you're
having
having?
a boy.
Oh, so that's perfect for you.
In May. We're
But-
doing May.
So you have surpassed that.
Yep.
You are now married. You're having a kid.
Yep.
Did it change anything along
From
the way?
the outside looking in, we look like the biggest power couple in drag racing, right? Like she's a nurse, thank God. My stepmom is a nurse, and my stepdad is involved. He's a PA, so
you had a lot of knowledge
I had
there with
a
you.
lot, and that's something else that I meant to mention earlier is when you go through a traumatic deal like that and you go home, you lose that day-to-day concentrated care of the nursing staff, right? You go, and like, let's just say it was you that it happened to. You would have came home, and I'm not saying your parents couldn't have taken care of you, but the
they're not the
medical
same.
knowledge
They're
was
not-
not
they don't
there,
know the medical
right?
knowledge, yeah.
So when I started feeling a certain way, or I looked a certain way, or maybe an area on my hand or my foot or my face looked different, they knew immediately we needed to do something, right? And I'm not saying your parents wouldn't, but when
being in the medical field, they know what to do.
Right. 100% of the time I was with somebody involved in the medical field. Sometimes I had two there, right? But back to asking if it changed anything, Melissa went from my girlfriend and my significant other to my caregiver. And those are two different things when you're talking about being in a relationship with someone, right? So it took us a little bit to transition back to, because when I was good and everything was fine, it took us a minute to transition back to a couple, as in an affectionate couple, right? It took a toll on us a little bit, and that's from the outside. And I would not have made it through as smoothly as I did without her, and I love her for that. But it was different. Like, it didn't, from the outside, it was not what it looked like. It took us, it probably took us a year, to kind of transition away from that, because she went into nurse mode, which I'm glad. Like, I'm thankful that she did that, because it made my recovery, though rocky and rough, because the recovery from a severe burn is a year. I don't care. I was the most physical therapy concentrated person you had ever seen. The burn center today still will tell you, if you called them and ask Katie Dallas, who was one of my occupational therapists down there, who her best patient was as far as physical therapy and whatnot is concerned, and 100% she's going to say me. Like, I was on it, but it still took a year to get back to my new normal, right? I mean, for the most part, I live a very normal life, but there are still things involving my hands that are a little bit different, and my lung capacity is still a little bit different, and now I have this deal with my eyes, so, but Melissa had to go from my girlfriend to completely concentrated on caring for me, especially the first 2 months, dude, because I couldn't feed myself. I couldn't bathe myself. I couldn't go to the bathroom and wipe my own ass. Like,
So
I was
it
25.
It changes everything.
I was 24 years old and turned 25 in December, and my mom and my girlfriend at the time are wiping my ass when I'm done going to like, that's almost demoralizing a little bit, so, these things right here are 100% of your independence. I want you to think about just leaving here without your hands. You're not doing it.
You're not going to be able to function.
Can't do anything, right? So she had to serve as my hands, sometimes as my eyes, depending on what I was doing surgery-wise, and so to wrap all that up, it did. It took it wasn't bad. I'm not saying that we regret that chapter, or that season of our life.
But it definitely made everything better.
Right.
Stronger.
But and I think it probably ultimately made us stronger. She unfortunately lost. So I wrecked in September, November, December, January, and February. She lost her mom unexpectedly, So like we had a really rough year and a half, and but we came out on the other side of it. My dad, my mom, my step parents, my step family, my brothers, my step brothers, my sister. I've still got all of my grandparents, aunts and uncles and cousins, like they all, and the racing community as a whole, my community back home, they stood behind me pretty tall. And a lot of, there was a lot of money raised to help pay for the medical expenses that insurance didn't cover. And, I got a service dog. A lot of things happened there. And from the support I got from the people that I just mentioned, they made it pretty smooth for me.
When is she due?
In May.
Oh, so that's like coming right up.
Yeah, we're about halfway done. We're roughly halfway through. Actually, we may be exactly. I think we were 19.
I ain't never got a girl pregnant, but
that you know of.
Yeah, that I know of. Is it changed? Hormones, anything?
Man, she's had a pretty smooth. Like I've heard horror stories.
I've heard some stories about people when they get pregnant, everything changes. But
no, for her, she hasn't been sick for the most part. It's been pretty normal. Really tired, obviously, but she's growing another human
for sure.
And we went for our first ultrasound.
What was that like?
Tuesday afternoon, so less than a week ago. And I take that back. It was our second, but the first one we went to, the dude was like the size of a walnut, right? Just a little blob. You couldn't really tell. But we went this time, and he had a head, hands, arms, fingers, a feet. He's got the right parts down there. It was real. Then that I did that.
Yeah.
And they give us all the pictures. So it's kind of starting to become real because we're putting a nursery together. We're starting to acquire all the things that you need to become, first time parents, and clothes and strollers but you're never, and I'm sure your mom would agree, I don't think you're ever really ready. Right? No, he comes out and the doctor hands him to you, and then it's real.
Sure.
So we're just trying to prepare. We're trying to prepare not only because I want to be a good parent. You grew up like me. Very fortunate. Had nice things. Had really nice race cars.
Yep.
A great family. A supportive family. You got to play sports. You got to race. Y'all have traveled. Your dad's got a successful business. You and I grew up very fortunate. And I'm thankful and grateful for that. But I just hope that I can be half the dad that my dad's been to me. If I'm half the father to my child that my dad is to me, I've done something good. Because I'll never be able to do. Well, I say that. I hope I can do for my child that what my dad has done for me. And then the same goes for my mom. Melissa's the same way. She wants to be the best mother she can be, and that's just what you hope for. You want a healthy baby, and you want to provide for them, and I just hope I can do it like I've been provided for. But,
that's good. How long did it take before you got back into a race car?
1 year. Actually, I take that back. About 8 months after the crash, I drove a little bracket car.
Was that just to get back into it?
Yeah, I just wanted to see. I just wanted to go rip a burnout loose. Well, actually, I knew. So I wrecked in September. I was back at South Georgia that February. I wasn't racing, obviously. I was still bandaged up or had my compression stuff on and was wearing the face mask and had to wear a big hat and sunscreen. I was still very much in recovery. But I knew when I got back to Georgia, the very track that I almost lost my life at, that I wanted to at least get back in a car.
Yeah.
Because, I'm one of those, if a horse bucks you off, you got to get back on kind of
For
people.
sure.
So, and my psychiatrist that I dealt with at the hospital said that. She was like, do not let this defeat you. And she didn't mean go back and race. She just meant that if I thought that would help me kind of overcome some of the psychological struggles, because PTSD is real. I had it. Depression, anxiety over the whole deal, which is where my service dog comes into play.
What's I know what a service dog is, but I don't know exactly what they do. But
I guess really she was more focused on the emotional support, like the PTSD and stuff. I'm not going to say I never thought it was real, but the only time that you ever really hear that term is soldiers, people coming back from a deployment, right? Well, any traumatic thing you experience in your life can cause that, you know. And we didn't know what was wrong with me. We just knew that I was off. Like, I just wasn't mentally.
What were you doing?
Mentally, I was just not. I was super to myself, depressed. Why did this have to happen to me? You know, and this was in the time where I couldn't do for myself. Like, literally everything I wanted to do had to be done by somebody else. Like, everything. Feeding, going to the bathroom. I was being bathed at 24 years old by my mother. Like, it's just not, you know, it's a rough time mentally, not only physically. But so I didn't really have much I could do with my hands. And Nenya, my service dog, could get the mail.
What?
She could go open the mail. You could tie a little rag to the mailbox. She could pull it open and go up in there and get the mail out. She picked my phone up off the floor. She could turn the lights on. We tied rags to any cabinet in the kitchen I wanted to get in, and she could pull the cabinets open, pull the refrigerator open. I mean, a pretty talented dog, really.
You still have her now?
I do, yeah.
Can she still do this now?
I haven't done much for the opening the cabinets and stuff, but she'll still do her little tricks and, you know, some of the stuff. And I don't use her as a service dog anymore. You know, that season fortunately has passed. But we got another dog about 4 years ago, and he has some separation anxiety if she's not around. Like, technically she can fly with me. She could be here with us now, but he doesn't do well when I take her on trips, so I don't really use her for it much anymore. But was still a pretty cool part.
I mean, that would be pretty cool. Like, if dog could get mail, turn the lights on and stuff. I mean, that's pretty dope.
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
What's the training like for that? Someone has to train them?
Yeah, so she was trained in a prison. They have a program up there called New Leash on Life, and they rescue dogs from the pound or HSPCA or whatever, bring them to the prison, put them through a little test, and kind of figure out which direction they're going. Are they going to be good house dogs? Are they going to be a service dog or what? And the prisoners, as their job, train the dogs in the prison. And these are obviously prisoners who are going to be getting out over the next however many years, and they get a little money to spend at the canteen or whatever, you know. But she was actually trained in a prison for 12 weeks, 7 days a week, 8 hours a day.
Wow.
She went through training there and lived in the prison. So when I got her home, she wouldn't eat dog food at all. And I'm like, what the hell's wrong with this dog? You know, why won't she eat? Well, then we later figured out she had a hookup in the kitchen at the prison. So she didn't have to eat dog food. They brought her whatever slop the prisoners had that day, you know, and she was like, I ain't eating kibbles and bits over there. You need to cook me some chicken, you know. So we had a little transition time there where we kind of had to get used to each other and create, I guess, a bond, as you would say. But, man, she's, you know, been the best. She was the best thing for my mental side of my recovery that I possibly, no medication or anything compared to what she was able to do. So it was pretty cool.
Well, that's cool. So you're good now. Your lungs and all that. I mean,
yeah, for the most part. You know, I guess the best example I could give you is I could dive off the diving board of a swimming pool, go to the other end, touch the wall, and swim all the way back. Right now, I can't quite get back. You know, so it's just capacity is not quite there, but. It got my vocal cords a little bit, like my voice is a little different. But man, for the most part, I'm 99% of what I used to be. You know, I don't day to day, there are zero limitations. Like I should be, but I'm not careful in the sun. I'm not like hiding from it or wearing, you know, I still wear a big straw hat at the racetrack sometimes and try to keep sunscreen on. But honestly, day to day, it's no different than I was in 2015 before September, you know. So not bad.
All right, so now we got through that. I'm glad you're all good. Everything's good. Now we can get back into the racing. That was a pretty tragedy type deal that went through in your life. So the beer money car.
Yep.
That's the Mustang. You were part of a TV show.
Yep.
Explain a little bit about that. How did that come apart?
Yeah, you know, so you started with the whole tragedy side of my accident, and that really, I mean, I wouldn't want you or anybody else to have to go through that, but it really paved the way for me to get to where
I was going to ask, did it open up anything?
It did, absolutely. Dude, I mean, I think just like we talked about earlier, I took advantage of good opportunities and made the best of them and kind of raced my way to where I am, but that definitely, it kind of put me on the map, I guess you would say. So the beer money car, after the accident in 2018, James Lawrence, who now is the president or whatever of SEMA, owned Power Auto Media out in Temecula, California. and they had this concept where they were going to have 4 teams, give them 10 days and $10,000 to build a race car. And for the inaugural season, they took applications. Myself, Eric Yost of Customs by Biggin, Pete Harrell of HED, Harrell Engine and Dyno, Chris Bailey, who works for Eric at Customs by Biggin, Chad Reynolds of Bang Shift, and Jason Smith of TBM Brakes, now owned by Motion Raceworks. We all submitted an application as a team, and they selected a dream team. So the dream team was any individual could apply, and they hand-selected a team, and that team was to be sponsored by Comp Cams. So on the first season, Dwayne Guttridge was on there, Jesse Adams from out in California. They had a pretty good team. But they selected Bodie, Street Outlaws, Bodie's team, and then Stinky Pinky's team, Disco Dean. And we were fan-voted in, and I'm a firm believer that we were fan-voted in because of, the popularity, I guess, or traction I'd gained, honestly, from my crash. So we go to California, they have a competition at the beginning called the Olympics, and where you finish in that competition determined in what order you got to choose the 6 cars that they had available. So we chose Beer Money, what is now Beer Money, a white 4-eyed Fox body. Honestly, it wasn't super nice, but it was a California 4-eyed Fox body, like red interior, 302 with a C4, really not in bad shape. We cut the thing completely apart, obviously, and in 10 days, we had a LS Turbo powered Fox body that ended up running 851 at 165 in the quarter on the 7th pass in a car we'd built in 10 days. So we go to Norwalk, have a 4-car shootout. We beat Jay Bodie's team first round, and Dwayne Guttridge, we beat the dream team in the final. And the deal with that show is if you win, you got $10,000 and you got to keep your car. If you lost, you didn't get anything, nothing. Pat on the back, see you later. Wow. So we won the show, brought Beer Money home, and in the meantime, I'd been contacted by Netflix to be on their show Fastest Car. For season 1, I just didn't have anything that fit. If you haven't seen that show, I'm on it. Season 2, episodes 6 and 7, but it's sleeper cars versus supercars. So there's one supercar versus 3 other, they called them sleeper cars. So I just didn't have anything for season 1, but they called me again for season 2, and all because of my story, like with going through the fire and coming back out of the fire, and and I took Jason Digby's tooth jerker and won the very first race that I was back racing at South Georgia. We won the last Leaf Spring Shootout. We reset the record like 4 or 5 times, and they had seen all that. And so I told him, I said, look, if we win this show, I've got the perfect car to come and race on your show. Perfect. It's ugly, but it's cool. It's a turbo car, and it's pretty fast. And so we won, and I guess the producer had started following along in my social media, and they called me like the next day and were like, "Oh my God, we saw you won. Are you still interested?" And I said, 100%. So let's see, that was in, I don't know, middle of the year in 2018, I guess. So in 2019, early that year, we raced the first race of Fastest Car in Greenville, South Carolina at some abandoned airport. So we raced 4 wide on this airport runway. And so I won the race in Greenville, and we went to the final out in L.A. They transported the car across the country, flew us out there. And then, obviously, if you watch the show, I wrecked in the final and spun out. But wow. So that, too, it was the Netflix deal, at least from the social media side of the things, took my career even beyond farther than that, even farther than the crash did. So, then we go on to season 2. We build another car called the Moonshine Missile, a nitrous station wagon, and then obviously most recently I've teamed up with Richard Freeman and everybody at Elite. So, but that, I guess, gets us through where Beer Money came from. Now I compete in small tire no prep with it. I've raced with y'all a couple times this year in small tire. I won at Darlington at No Prep Kings in small tire, and then runnered up at No Prep Kings in Virginia. So and I still am actively racing that thing. Like I have a grudge race down here at the U.S. Street Nationals in 3 weeks with it, you know. So
who you got to run?
The car's called Moonshine.
I don't know.
A little turbo G-body maybe.
So is it more like a no-time car now? You don't?
Yeah. I'm trying to, because coming from the grudge world that every now and again you'll stumble upon a shootout that you can't have shown a time in a calendar year. So
you just keep it as a no-time car.
Yeah, and the no prep stuff is no time anyway.
Have y'all upgraded the motor? Or just
It's way different than it used to be. The chassis, I guess the core, like the chassis, and really from the firewall back is the same. I've put a better gear in it. The transmission, Dave at Proformance beefed the transmission up for me recently. It's got a Greg Slack converter in it now, but it's still stock block LS. Still turbo. It's on alcohol now, but Precision came on and sponsored me for turbo stuff. It's got a big 98 on it now, and a lot of stuff in the engine. Some good companies have came on board, race winning brands, and T&D and Manton. Holly's on board. So we've Billet Atomizer does the fuel injectors for it. So it's pretty cool, a pretty cool piece, but it's way faster now than it really should be. But we have fun with it. No prep stuff.
I think it's pretty cool. It looks awesome. Yeah. So that led you into the NHRA, and we talked about that earlier. Yeah. And how you got into it. How much does it cost to run a season? I've talked to a few Top Fuel guys, and they're up to $2.5–3.5 million to run a season.
Competitively run. Well, there's two ways to look at that. Like you either join an existing program, and like I did, and just become a driver, or you buy all your own stuff and do it. Kind of like
if you buy it all out, I said you spent over $1 million.
Oh yeah, easily. I mean, you got to think you're gonna have 400 and 450,000 in the car, right? Because a roller, if you want a roller right now, you're probably gonna have to buy something that's already built, and you're probably gonna pay 200 plus for it. Yeah. You got to have, by the time you put an engine and electronics and whatever power adder, you're gonna have $400,000 at least in the car. You got to have $500,000 in a trailer. You got to have a couple $100,000 to $300,000 truck or tractor, and then you've got to supply the trailer with all the spare parts needed to go do it. So I'm gonna say it's $2 to $2.5 million. I would say $2 million, and you could do it. $1.5 million, you're not gonna have all the spare parts you need, but you could probably do it. Oh, yeah. But for a year, you need $500,000, in sponsorship. I've been fortunate to have acquired enough to make it.
Did you pick up any big sponsors? I know you were trying to get up with Yingling.
Yeah, they haven't done anything.
Have they talked to you?
They've talked to me, but they're super old school, man. Like the owners of I know somebody local to the brewery that knows the Yingling family, and he's like, dude, they still literally use flip phones. Like they're just old school, and they don't understand exposure. Yeah,
they don't need the exposure.
They just don't think they need it, and so I've got a couple. They're not official yet, so I'm not going to announce them yet. But I've got a couple that look pretty promising for next year. And if I can, those two to three together, I've pretty much got the season paid for.
Do you go off and get those yourself, or do you have like an agent?
I have a guy, Pete Merkel of Inertia Sports, that handles a lot of my stuff. But I actively pursue my own as well, and just send him, because he's the one that
I thought about getting somebody like that for my deal, because I have a few sponsors, but mine's a little bit different just because the way I act on the internet and all that. But so like I'll probably never have a corporate sponsor, which is good because I'll never be the type that wears a suit and tie and all that.
Right.
But I actually thought about hiring somebody that could possibly, I guess, talk more on a professional level.
And that's the biggest thing, and I think at the level you're at, especially the level I'm at, it's necessary. So that when you approach a sponsor, and I'm kind of like you. I can tell them what they need to know and probably could get the deal done, but I don't do it as good as somebody who can write up a formal contract and talk the talk.
Let them know what they're getting.
Right. And there's a way that you do that. And I do think that there is benefit, and Pete does a great job for me. I may bring the sponsorship to the table, but he is the one that seals the deal, and speaks the language. So, it's tough. Like,
I tell people all the time, it's very hard. I'm fortunate the sponsors that I do have, they kind of act like me.
Right.
So they're okay with what I post. And I even tell people I picked up a few sponsors this year, And I let them know. I said, hey, I'm just letting you know up front, my social media. When I make a post about a sponsor, it's professional. It is. But I use my social media as my daily stuff too. So when I make a personal post, just know it's a personal post.
Right.
Whatever happens. I stand behind it.
Right.
So that's where, and I tell people, I respect you. If you don't want to sponsor because you don't want to be a part of that, some people don't like seeing the word shit, ass, all that. Then I respect that.
Yeah.
But like Mark Minster, I mean, he's one of my good sponsors. He helps me out tremendously, but he don't really care.
Right.
I can do whatever I want.
Right.
Cameron Johnson Race Cars, he can do whatever I want. Brybeck Group, I mean, I'm allowed to like free roam and do whatever I want. I still be respectful, but I still don't take nobody's shit.
Yep.
So I can understand that. The NHRA is a little bit different. Y'all have a lot more, I guess you want to say, rules and stuff.
And the best example I can give on that is that when I'm in the pits at an NHRA race, you get the feel like you need to tuck your shirt in. You know, like
it's professional,
right? You know, and you have to carry yourself that way. You know, and because when the cameras are on, unlike with you guys, when the cameras are on, you know, on Fox at an NHRA race, they don't want to see you fighting. You know, like we saw the other night, and you know they don't want you cussing. You know,
the best way I put it as it's like NFL and NBA, whatever. They don't. And they have to. You get fined if you do shit like that. Like I mean, I even heard like if you take out a cone in the middle of the track, you get a fine for.
There's oil down fine. Like I had so at Atlanta, I had 2 oil downs.
And they fine you for that?
So the first one was either 5 or 10 points.
They take points away.
And then the second one was another 5 or 10 plus $500. The third one is another 5, 10, or maybe even 20 points, and it goes up from there, $1,000. Like I know a top fuel car, when they oil the track down, it's like $4,000.
That's crazy. I mean, but I mean, so if you explode a motor, you're probably getting points taken away.
More than likely. If the tractor or the scrubber has to go out on a racetrack, you're getting some kind, whether it's monetary or it's points, you're getting a fine somehow. Wow. Now, the reason for that, which I understand, is they're on a TV schedule. And, you know, and some of their broadcasts are live, and they have to keep the ball rolling. If they have a bunch of oil downs, they can't finish the show in their allotted time, right? So they try to make you make sure that your stuff is ready and that all the containment devices and that everything to prevent an oil down. I mean, sometimes it's inevitable, right? Yeah. You know, like Atlanta, we had a Wiggins clamp that came off, and it spit oil. I mean, a feed hose off of the oil pump, and I pumped most of the oil that was in the motor on the starting line. The next one, it burned a piston at like 1,000 feet. We hadn't qualified, or we were not qualified yet, and I legged it out through the quarter just to make sure we got in the show, and it shot it out of the vent tank, you know, and that was my second oil down for the weekend. So, and those point, like the monitor, I would rather them find me $5,000
to take points
than
away.
Take the points, man, because it hurt. Like it was the difference this year in me finishing 5th and 6th, right? You know, like it hurt, man. You know, so
they run a pretty tight ship over there.
Yeah, they do. And I'm gonna tell you, when they come by, they come on the scooters. They have guys that call each class. When they come by on the scooter and they tell you it's time to go, it is time to go. And if you don't make it, they ain't waiting for nobody. Yeah. They don't care if you're on the way up the staging lanes. If the car that you're running is ready, they fire him up and put him in the burnout box, and they will turn your ass around.
And that's how it should be. That's the same thing with MPK, and I think that's why they run good. Even I ran MPK for the last year or so. Going to a regular event, U.S. Street National, or World Street Nationals over in Orlando, and then we just went to Snowbirds. Even though it's ran pretty well, it's not the same.
No.
And we spent 4 days in Orlando to make 3 passes.
Right.
And then Bradenton, it was a little bit smoother.
Yeah.
But you were still there 4 or 5 days. With MPK, you're there for 2 days. You're on a scheduled time. If you have to run at 7:15, you better be in the burnout box at 7:15.
And I think I've been to 2 or 3 3 or 4 MPK events now, and obviously I've ran a full season with the NHRA, and they are the best at putting on a show. Because at the end of the day, you got what we as racers have to remember, and also some of these promoters who are maybe just getting in the game or have been even for some time, is we are in the entertainment business.
Yeah.
that is how we
Nobody
all
wants to see
make a
tractors
living.
going down the track.
Absolutely not. And that's another reason.
Radio racing is probably dying.
That's exactly right. Because you go think about watching a pro mod race. 7 out of 10 cars go down the racetrack.
For sure.
At a radial race, at a high-level radial race, it's like 3 out of 10.
And then they got to go out there and prep again. So now it's another 45, 50 minutes. That's why, like with no prep, I think that's what's the best about us is that I'm not – sometimes it's not 100% safe, but like when I was in Arizona, I was going up to run Kai in the semifinals, and it poured down rain on us. Mm-hmm. Rained hard. They're not allowed to go. So, like, when it rains, people go out there, they'll suck the track off, they'll blow it off, and then they'll take a rotator and they'll rotate it. Well, on our stuff, they're not allowed to do that. So they literally just broom the water off to the wall, and then they send us down. Me and Kai were in the burnout box. It don't matter who's in the burnout box. That's just how it is. And did we let the start line? We were running 390 to 395 to smoking the tires, and he just caught the car faster than I did, and he ended up winning the round. I've been to some tracks where if you have an oil down, they take that little there's a machine that goes out there
like a Zamboni or whatever.
Yeah, and I guess it puts soap down, but it sucks it up.
Yeah.
Then they take a broom tractor and they broom it off to the wall real quick, and then you send it back down. If you're in the burnout box, so be it. It's just bad luck on you, I guess. So I think that's why NPK does so good, because cleanup times 10 minutes.
Sure.
Just fucking go.
That's
Sometimes less than that. I mean,
the way it has to be.
But it keeps cars on the track. It keeps the fans in the stands. They're not sitting there waiting. That's one thing I don't like about a radio event is that, I mean, there's times like Georgia, for instance. I bet you Radio versus the World, when there was fucking 70 cars, they would prep the track 4 to 6 times without them 70 cars, and they had to do it. So now Radio versus the World has went from fucking running for an hour and a half to running 4 hours long.
Yep.
Like, it just, so certain stuff like that, it's just hard.
Yeah, and like in the NHRA, when they have whether they have an oil down or they need to prep the track, like it's like minions, man. When it's track prep time, there's 2 or 3 tractors, there's a couple scrubbers, and they are on it. It's like a smooth running machine.
Is it the same people at every event?
Yep.
So they
Same,
have
and they carry their own equipment. They have transfer trucks, and they, like, same dude drives the same tractor. They all know their place. Everybody's got a radio on. When it's time to move, they're moving. And it's it's neat to watch outside of the race and just watch how they work. At the racetrack. I mean, it's a tight ship over there. It's pretty cool.
When's y'all season start for the new year?
So we have the Gator Nationals March 10th through the 13th down here in Gainesville. We go Gainesville, Charlotte, Virginia. Obviously, Charlotte being my home track. After Virginia, Melissa and I will have our kid. We have about a month off, thank God, and then we go to Norwalk. Couple races between there, U.S. Nationals, Labor Day, and we finish this year in Dallas instead of Vegas, so we're done in October. A 10-race year as opposed to 12. We kind of campaigned to try to make it a little more affordable for some of these lower budget teams. So we went from 12 to 10 races for this year, so we'll see how it goes. But start in March and end in October.
That's good. That's kind of similar to NPK, other than we're going to have 15 races.
I was going to say, y'all got
brutal.
a bunch. And that's something that
people don't understand how.
Well, and for, a little different for you guys, because while not all of you, I would say most of the guys that run with y'all are business owners or do something besides race, right? Like, for the most part, the core group in the NHRA, which Top Fuel, Funny Car, Pro Stock, and Pro Stock Motorcycle, and even some of the Pro Mod class, for the most part, that's what they do for a living, right? So traveling track to track, back-to-back weekends, back-to-back-to-back weekends is just kind of a normal thing, right? Yeah. But for working class like you guys, and I know that there's several that this is all they do for a living, and you're getting that way as well, but that's tough. Somebody like, let's just say Disco Dean, who owns his own business back in Ohio, like, he has to spend 4 or 5 weeks straight on the road at least, and I could see that being pretty tough.
It's definitely, they did tell us for this year that the schedule, they're going to try to give us 1 to 2 weeks per event in between. Well, so that'll be a lot better, because like this schedule this previous year, the last 8 races was ran in 8 weeks. So we ran back to back to back. We went from Idaho to Arizona, Arizona to Colorado, Colorado down to Tulsa, Tulsa to Oklahoma, or Texas, Texas to Louisiana, and then Louisiana to Bradenton. So 7 weeks. Was back to back to back. So getting parts, getting car, having issues. I blew a door off.
That's right.
In Idaho. I mean, I had quite a bit of stuff.
Was it during that stint that you blew the whole nose off the car?
That was so that was Virginia. So we had Virginia. So no, it was 8 races. So we ran Virginia, then we went to Idaho. And
that's right. You went home.
Went home, fixed it one day, and then had to drive 45 hours to get to Idaho. And then the first pass when I got to Idaho, because I did not see that when we blew the front end off in Virginia, I didn't know that the panel on the outside of the door was already starting to come. We didn't really have time to look at it. We were fucking extremely tired. We drove 45 hours straight there. A lot of people didn't even think we would make it, but first pass down the track, it blew the outer skin of the door off. So I was like, damn, dude, like now we got more problems. So then we ended up getting that fixed, going from there. But it was a brutal, brutal season.
That times like that, stretches like that, especially for your crew and stuff, will make you you either hate
it's
each
make
other
or
break right there. Like dude, you gotta love it.
And my team's awesome, man. But like you said, it literally has its challenging times, like because being stuck. It's not like being like I've been with my mom and dad. I've known them since I'm 25 years old, so they're a little different. But being stuck with crew members, and even though you know them, you really get to know them
you
when
live
you're
with
there
them
every single fucking day.
Oh yeah.
So that's where it makes it a little bit tougher. But my crew made it all the way through it. I actually brought Kyle, one of the guys that was on from last year. I told him if we could make it through this year and I could afford it, I would bring him on full time, which we did. So now I have my first full time guy.
Good.
Going from there. Just continue to keep building.
And that's another part of this that a lot of people don't understand is to race at the level that we race at. You can't just bring anybody along.
No,
right?
They got to know.
They got to know their stuff. You know, they have to be as a professional driver. You have to have a professional crew
for sure.
You know, like Justin Elks. Probably one of the most, if not the most desired chassis tuners in the game, right? You know, and is just as good tuning the car from bumper to bumper. Anthony Lum, same deal. And both of those are crew chiefs on my crew. Ben Stoss is firewall forward, one of the best I've ever seen. Mike Earl from the firewall back, one of the best I've ever seen. Like I have a grade A crew, you know, and it shows.
When you win events.
When you get in the later rounds and they're turning you around quick and we experience a problem. Like in Dallas, in the semifinal, even if you watch the replay on Fox, the car's smoking out from under the fenders, the front end when I pull off of the racetrack. We did push the intake gasket out of the China rail in the back and it coated the engine compartment and underneath in oil. So we get back to the trailer, we've got like 25 minutes to have the car back in the staging lanes. Well, just the routine maintenance between rounds is about that long, and that's running the valves, putting plugs in it, you know, checking over the rest of the car. You know, there's a whole procedure between rounds that you go through to make sure it's ready for the next run. And thankfully, I had some friends locally, Chad Reynolds, a guy that worked for my dad, some others that were there to watch, and we handed out rags and bottles of brake clean and said, get busy, you know, I mean, because it was everywhere. I mean, you know, I was still at speed whenever it did it, so it was up under the car. I mean, it was coated the whole underside of the hood. Like, there was a massive cleanup, and when we shoved the front end on, they were giving us our last call to come to the staging lanes, you know, and we got it done. And had it not been for, you know, my crew being as on it as they were, we probably wouldn't have made the call, you know. So, and you know, with between round maintenance and what it takes to run at that level.
It gets fast, especially when you go down in the last couple rounds. I mean, they can run it fast, and I've actually gotten into a couple arguments with them because you do have $250,000 cars, and like I would make a pass for MPK. Just say so you win third round, you go into semifinals, fourth round. By the time I would make a pass and get back to my pits, they were like, okay, you need to go up to the starting line to pull chips. Well, when you pull chips, you're there for like maybe 10 minutes, and then 5 minutes later, you got to have the car back ready. And I kind of telling them, I said, dude, we still got to maintenance stuff. I mean, there were some rounds that we would run 15 to 20 minutes right after, and the motor would be hot as shit, but you have to run it. But it's just how it is. So either you don't run it, you stay at your trailer, or you do go run it. And then there's some times where they're they're generous, and they'll give you time. They'll see what happens. I mean, there was times where Lizzie hurt a motor, so they gave him time to put a motor in because they do want to make sure it's a good race, good
Right,
TV
yeah.
show type deal. But sometimes, dude, you have to get on. I would get into arguments because you're just running it too damn fast. And
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's, the whole schedule is based around Top Fuel and Funny Car. They are the premier class, right? And especially when there's a TV schedule, you don't ever know. They may run, they always start the day. Let's talking on race day, Top Fuel, Funny Car, Pro Stock Motorcycle, us, right? Well, later in the day, they may just flop that. Well, now we're first, and we may be the last to run that round and the first to run the next round, and it's an immediate turnaround. As fast as you can get them together, get them back to the staging lanes, so they can give the Top Fuel guys, because it takes them an hour, 45 minutes to, because they're rebuilding engines every run.
Yeah,
right?
no, they're extreme.
So
but
especially between the semifinal and the final, they have to flop it because they want Top Fuel to be the last class down the racetrack. So that's always a flop of the schedule. But it's tough, and you got to have a crew that not only knows what they're doing but can work together. And then you talk about how being around each other for that long. If you're on a 3 or 4 week stint, and tensions get high, it can get kind of volatile in there. You kind of got to be careful. But it takes an army to race at this level, and I'm thankful that I've got a good one.
Yeah. So it's very tough to run over there, but you got 2 wins this year.
I did.
What was it like to get your first win there? I mean,
Man.
I seen it on TV, and you were very emotional.
Yeah. That at that moment then, when Amanda, started that interview, I realized then that we had made it full circle, right? I'd went from, like I said earlier, I went from the darkest time and a time that I thought was going to change my life forever, which I guess ultimately it kind of did, but I just won at the professional level. There are people that will race their entire lives and may race in the NHRA their entire career and never win a Wally. I mean, that's the most prestigious trophy in drag racing.
Did you hang it up?
Oh yeah. But I've got a little, similar to this, I've got a little podcast studio in my garage where I do some stuff, and they're right there on my toolbox in the background of that. But I mean, I slept with the first one for the first 3 or 4 nights, and flew on the airplane with me on the way back from Dallas. I had an open seat beside me, and I belted him in, but I mean, that was for my dad and I, we had just done what we had always hoped and dreamed that we would do.
Yeah.
And we had done it. We've won Pro Mod at the highest level there is in door slammer drag racing. That's it.
Was the second race just as good as the first?
Yeah, but the second race, it would, not that I wasn't emotional about the win, like it was still a big deal, but it was more of a pumped up, like we were fired up. The first one, I mean, I've said it many times, like when I pulled the chutes after that run and I saw my win light come on, dude, I lost it. I mean, I was crying before I ever pulled off the racetrack, and I actually had to gather myself a little bit before I started the interview with Amanda. I mean, I'm crying, like I'm gasping for breath. I'm crying so hard. And Amanda said, Lyle, we've got 8 seconds before we're live. So I get my stuff back together, and I ended up not making it through the interview either. But, I mean, when you turn off the racetrack there and they give you all the stuff, it's kind of everything's happening all at once, and
Yeah.
But then when my dad got down there, dude, it was pretty emotional again. We cried for a minute, and it's when you get to share something. I mean, I regardless of who you get to share it with, but I got to share that with my dad, who has been, 100% the reason that I've been able to do what I've been able to do in my racing career, and we get to share that together. It's pretty cool. But, we go to Vegas, last race of the year. I won in Dallas, JR won Bristol. So we're, as rookies, we've both got a win apiece. And
Y'all were the finals, weren't you?
yeah. So there was only 11 cars, I think, in Vegas. And that's pretty common for the last race of the year there. If you're not mathematically eligible to win the championship,
You're just not going.
you're not going. Now, Jose locked up the championship in Bristol, but I had missed 2 races earlier in the year, and we were like, we're going to Vegas. I'd never been to Vegas, and so we were going anyway. And I had I honestly had a pretty, it wasn't easy, but I had a kind of paved way to the final. All I had to do was get by Justin Bond in the first round where he went red. Stevie had a problem, and the Russian dude beat him in the first round, and I had that Russian guy second round, and then I had a bye to the final. But JR and I both made it to the final, and that was kind of what it would take if they had a Rookie of the Year, that this was going to determine it, this race right here, and I
Did
got
they give out a Rookie of the Year?
no, not anymore.
I was like, fuck.
When the RPM, I was like, man, really, I did all this for nothing. No, I'm just kidding. But so I got him pretty good on the starting line, and he went 79 to my 81. I beat him by 11 thou on a hole shot. So really, could not have dreamed a better way to end the year. Obviously, we had a pretty rough season. We didn't do too well with the Pro Charge car. Spirits and morale were pretty down. We qualified in the 15 spot and went out in Charlotte. But the Hairston family and everybody at Elite offered me up the twin turbo car, which, as you know, is what I come from, and it's kind of my passion. I really like the turbo stuff, and we go to Dallas and win, and we finish it off in Vegas. So
will you be running a turbo car this year, or Pro Charger?
Yeah, we're gonna stay with the Pro Charge, or excuse me, we're gonna stay with the turbo car. I like it. Obviously, with 2 wins out of 3 races, as opposed to 0 out of the first 7, or 6 in the Pro Charge car, it kind of makes that decision easy. But we're gonna stick with the turbo car, still owned by the Hairston family and Elite powered. But same team, we'll have same crew. And
you and Laughlin were partners for a little while.
Yeah, and then when he went to Top Fuel, he stepped out of the Pro Mod, and then I continued on, obviously. So he's pursuing his Top Fuel career, which I think is great. Scott Palmer, you're like myself, you're good friends with, and is a great dude, and I imagine they'll have some success there. But we'll just be a 1-car Pro Mod team next year, and
that means more focus on you.
And yeah, and I liked having Alex as a teammate, right? It was cool to be around him, and I learned a lot from him as far as how he does social media stuff. I've confided in you some for that, but I am looking forward to 100% focus on my program, and obviously I've got my sights set on a championship. I'll, just like you, I want it. You got 2 or 3 wins this year? 3?
Yeah, 3.
And I know you are like me. I'm hungry, man. I want to win. I mean, I'd love to go out there and win all 10. Now, obviously the odds of that happening are super slim, but I would love to have another, 3 or 4 wins this year, and wrap up a championship. And that's what our goal is next year. We're gonna give it all we got, run all 10, and see if we can't win the championship at the end of the year.
And then, so for y'all that don't know, Lyle works at Modern Racing, right?
Yep.
So that's who he drives for. He drives for Elite, Modern Racing. Justin's wired probably the last 6 cars of mine. Yeah. So he's the only one that'll do the wiring for me. The new Nova that we're building, he'll be wiring that car too. But what's it like to work with Justin? What's it like?
Man, I stepped into a different world. I came from more of your grassroots kind of backwoods racing, kind of like you.
That's professional over there.
That is a professional. I tell
everybody all the time, that is a professional race shop.
Yes, sir. They've got Todd Beavis leads the chassis shop back there. And if you know anything about a chassis builder, Todd Beavis rings a bell. Yeah. He built most, if not all, the pro stock trucks back when that thing was around, and is just an awesome dude. Justin Elks, who was a pro stock crew chief for many years, worked for the Grays, worked for KB some, I think. Maybe not. He'll probably slap me for that. And then when Elite founded their Pro Mod program, Richard hired Justin to kind of lead the charge there. So we are an Elite Motorsports backed, I guess you would say, and then Pro Mod team, and then Modern Racing, we handle the Pro Mod operations as a whole. So when I started driving for them, I also went to work there.
What do you do there?
So my title has kind of changed along the way. I went there to be the project manager, but when we quickly realized that there was some opportunity for us to take this Pro Mod deal to the next level, it was better if I could kind of focus on that. And so I handle a lot of their social media and marketing. We were starting to do some commercial stuff to kind of debut some new products or talk about existing products we already have, and I'm kind of the face of that, I guess you would say. And then, probably half my time there is spent pursuing sponsorship and getting things ready, logistically for the NHRA season and whatnot. So really anything Justin needs done there, but for the most part, social media and marketing and stuff is kind of what I do, because we do produce a lot of our own products. Their wiring department, like you said, is second to none. Mitch and Moss and Tim and all the guys over there in the wiring department are really good at what they do, and it's pretty impressive to see what they turn out there. Like your stuff. If there's an NHRA Pro Stock car out there, more than likely it's got one of our wiring harnesses in it. We're starting to do some stuff with this factory experimental class that they've got coming to the NHRA. Wire all of your stuff, not most, but a lot of your upfront pro mods we've wired, are fabricated on or turnкeyed. So it is about as professional of a race shop as I've ever seen when it comes to drag racing.
Has there been any talks about doing a paint side to it?
I don't know.
I think that would be the end all to the one-stop shop.
There's the problem, with that is at that level, you don't just hire somebody and teach them. You hire somebody who already knows and already has, so that would be acquiring another business. And honestly, man, there's like 17 cars in there right now.
Yeah.
85% of those are pro mods, and we have a great paint shop right down the road that we use, and it's just as easy to put them in a little trailer and haul them 20 minutes up the road and let him do it, as opposed to trying to do it on our own. So I don't think you'll ever see a paint shop there, but from a pile of roll bars to a tuned race car, we can do it. We can literally do it all. We got a complete fab department, a complete wiring and assembly department. We've got a hub dyno. You ran your car on a little bit. So it is a one-stop shop as far as drag racing is concerned. We can do it all.
All right. So before we get out of here, that's pretty much going to wrap up everything for today. Don't want to bore y'all too much, but I do want to talk about, because you do a fundraiser.
Yep.
And we'll talk about that a little bit. We'll let you get some words in.
Yep.
Thanks to whoever it is. Yep. Congratulations, blah, blah, blah. And then we're going to get out of here. But let's talk a little bit about the fundraiser.
So the burn center that I was in, the JMS Burn Center in Augusta, Georgia there, they saved my life, and I told him, I said, I'll never be able to repay you adequately, but I do want to do something every year to give back something. So about 2 years ago, 3 years ago now, hell, maybe 4, I started a fundraiser the fall of every year to benefit the kids that spend their Christmas holiday in the burn center. Something else that folks don't think about is that burn center in particular, most of the severely burnt patients there were probably airlifted, and were brought in from out of state, just like me. I was not from there at all, but I ended up there for a couple months, and there are kids. Right now it's burn season. People are having campfires with, don't know there's aerosol cans in there, using gasoline to light it, and it's burn season. So there are kids that came in before Christmas that were there through the Christmas holiday, and their families had to relocate, which means they probably either had to quit or take a leave of absence from their job. So money's not coming in, but the bills are, and some of these families maybe couldn't afford, or I know they can't afford to buy their kids Christmas. So we started the fundraiser 4 years ago to go along with their Shop with the Docs program, and we just provide Christmas presents and money for these families that spend their Christmas holiday there. This year I had my biggest one yet, and we're going to be able to give throughout the entire year. So anytime the Burn Center needs anything, they can contact me, and I can either just send them, just money, or if they need supplies or whatever they need. So it's a pretty neat deal, and just my way of trying to give back to the place that literally saved my life. So it's pretty rewarding. We had 23 kids this year that were in intensive care at that hospital that we provided Christmas for. So it's heartwarming, and it makes you feel like you're somewhat giving back to a place that that literally brought you back from near death. So it just means a lot to me. And for any of you that watch this that were a part of that, I thank you for it. It means a lot to those families, and it means a lot to the people at that hospital that do their thing down there. So it's a pretty awesome deal.
Oh yeah. You have any sponsors?
I do,
Anybody
and I had to pull them up on my phone, so I didn't leave anybody out. But obviously, everybody at Elite, Richard Freeman, Erica Enders, TJ, and all those, Aaron Stanfield, all the crew guys and everybody at Elite Performance at the engine shop, everybody at Elite HP and Elite Cultivation. Just an awesome team to be associated, man. They're first class, they're top notch, and they love to win and they love to race, and I definitely can't thank them enough. Everybody at Modern, Justin Elks, the whole gang, my crew, Anthony Lum, Ben, Stas, Mike Earl, my dad. They all keep me running, and I couldn't do it without them either. Motion Raceworks, they Doug and the guys at Andy, Brian, Cletus, everybody at Motion, they sponsor about anything I'll drive with wheels on it, and it means a lot from them. Russell Miller and everybody at PD Fleet, Tommy Kirk and everybody at MacFab been with me since the very beginning, literally, and continue to support me today. And we've got some pretty cool things coming from MacFab this year that I'm looking forward to. But the Harristons that literally gave me a car to run this year and at the end of last year, Jake, Jim, and Clint, I can't thank them enough. Jack at Billet Atomizer, VP Racing Fuels, Wilson Manifolds, obviously Precision Turbo. They've been with me for a while, and I can't thank them enough. Ferry Farms, that is one sponsor. They're a beef jerky company out of Michigan that came on board, and they're going to fly with us next year. So thank those guys. JJ Supply, and then obviously everybody in the NHRA and everybody that follows, Lyle Barnett Racing and LBR. You guys are a big part of why we do this, and everybody that I've mentioned there, I just can't thank you enough. I've got some. I will say that we're in the works with a Badass Vodka is what it's called. They're a Florida-based vodka company that we're working with, and then Azalea Gynecology. Got a sponsorship. Hopefully that we're going to wrap up a gynecology practice from North Carolina. That's going to sponsor us for the 4 wides. So I got some cool stuff coming. Definitely be on the lookout for some stuff with MacFab. I can't lead into any of that yet, but we've got some pretty cool things in the works, so hopefully we'll be able to release that sometime soon. That's about all I got, though.
Well, hopefully, maybe the next time I want to get you to come back again. Yeah. Maybe after the NHRA season, we'll talk about the year. I mean, yep. You had a pretty good year last year. You had a pretty rough year a couple years ago.
Yeah, we finished. We finished 6th in the points this year. So I get to fly a single digit on the side of the car, and just like you finished.
So what do you mean? What do you mean by that?
So we finished 6th in the points, and in the NHRA at least 1 through 9 or 1 through 10 at least, you put the respective number you finished as your new number for next year.
So you get to put number 6.
Number 6, yep. So like Jose, Stevie's flew the number 1 the past 2 years. Jose will fly the 1 next year. So that's a big deal. That.
Do you have to change the number?
No, you don't. But I will. It's a big deal. It's kind of cool that that we ran well enough to finish well within the top 10 and almost within the top 5. So we did have a really good end of the year, and it was a good way for us to set up and get ready to come into 2022. And I'm looking forward to it. I hope some of you at least watching can make it out to a race. If you do, be sure to come by. And we look forward to doing it for you. It's we've got championship on our mind, and that's really all I'm focused on. I want to win it. So we'll see what happens.
Well, anyways, I want to thank you for coming on. This was awesome. We're going to be bringing more guests on for SWANTALK. We are going to be posting every Monday and Thursday, 4:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Going to try to do a whole lot better this year, staying on schedule for y'all and posting videos. We got the new car content coming out. We have NPK starting up at the end of March. There's going to be some cool stuff, plus the guests that we will be bringing on. And like I said, I'm going to schedule it in. I do want to bring Lyle back on to just talk more about his racing, his life. We'll get more outside of his racing and get more down to it. We just kind of ran out of time today. He's got to get on an airplane. But anyways, guys, I want to thank y'all for tuning in. If you haven't done already, subscribe to this channel. Make sure you have bell notifications, everything turned on, so whenever we do post a video, y'all are being able to watch it or listen to it first. I'm Justin Swanstrom, and I will see y'all later.
See ya.
Peace.